Hello, I'm Francis Collie, founder of the tracking association Suis, Piste, based in Dordogne, southwest of France, by the Valley of Mankind, famous for its prehistoric rock art caves such as Lascaux and Fond de Gomme. My talk will focus on tracking as storytelling. I will give it an inception twist, or mise en abîme as we say in France, as indeed I will storytell you through that very idea. You probably do not know me, still I will ask you to trust me for the beginning of this story to make it as immersive as it can get. As you are sitting comfortably in front of your screen, I'm asking you to close your eyes. Chapter 1. Dreaming. Your screen is black now, so no need to cheat. Please keep your eyes closed. And do not worry, it's not going to be a cheap and creepy hypnosis session. Just a nice story that begins in the dark. And with your eyes closed, you can relate to that darkness. But can you also see that fluffy mist under your closed eyelids? Different shades of color and light into the black. Try focusing on these anomalies. But don't try to chase them with your eyes, or they will vanish. Let these variations come to you, and try to see more of them. Wider, deeper, brighter. You may have a rational explanation as to what makes blackness so lively. But in my story, this is the matter from which dreams are made of. When you dream, you let yourself flow into this subconscious matter. Right now, you are not dreaming, but listening to my story, the story of someone else's dream. So now that you have experienced dream material, you can gently open your eyes and watch that someone's dream on your screen.
I feel out of time and space. Great Scott! What is this land? Red hot sandy desert country. Never seen this in my life. I'm used to cold, bluish ice age valleys. I like it though. Hey, look out! What is this strange creature by the waterhole? Looking like a buck with shed antlers and unbalanced limbs. Very short front arms and very long hind legs. He walks slowly in an uncertain manner, in between bipedy and quadrupedy. I can certainly relate to that. But hey, he has seen something and is now blasting off, hopping, jumping, bouncing. How odd. More of them, therefore, going in all directions.
A very colorful dream, composed of many dots. Each one seems alive, spins at different speeds, in different directions, in different ochre colors. As you look closely at some dots, you realize they are little grains of sand. And as you look around, you see that vast desert reaching out in all directions, as far as you can look. Where are you? Well, it seems you are floating above that beautiful desert, and you feel warm, happy, and excited. The more you stare at this amazing scene, the more you seem to understand its patterns. The sand dots create bigger circles that are interwoven, and the colors seem to form another superimposed pattern. 4 parallel lines slash the central circle. It reminds you of your own tracks. Is this black disc a cave? Does this mean that your spirit is somehow flying above your body? Is it all a dream? And does all this red heat mean that spring is coming? Then you should wake up. You can now open your eyes and get back into your body. You hear a growl. Nothing to fear, it's only your belly begging for food. You yawn, you uncoil, and stretch your spine, your limbs. As blood starts to flow back into your extremities, your fingertips get itchy, and you dig your claws into the stone wall beside you. You scratch it as hard as you can to feel something in those numb fingers. You stop before it gets too painful and run out from this rock bowel in a hungry cave bear gallop, just waking from his ice age winter hibernation. Liked it? Stories can be understood in layers, depending on the background of their listeners. Let me analyze there for you two themes that I found important here. The first one is dreaming. This painting is called Kangaroo Tracking by my friend Shea Cabal Jakamura from Nunukal tribe, Stradbroke Islands, on the east coast of Australia. Aboriginal iconography is the oldest writing on Earth, as it is Earth's writing itself, you guessed it, tracks. You see here the kind of 7 and 1s there. They are kangaroo tracks. Their rear feet jumping, boing, boing. The U shape there is a human. When you sit on the sand, that's the track of your bottom. And the long line there, it's the spear, so that makes it a hunter or a tracker. And the bear scratch there, well, I added myself for the sake of the presentation, because as far as I know, well, there are no bears down under. This little story points out how Aboriginal culture and tracking are connected. And in fact, all First Nations, that means those living the lands, they're all relying on tracking to survive. It's become second nature for them. And tracking is probably the most important know-how, and I would say it's even more important than fire. Aborigines' culture is the most ancient still alive, and they managed to pass their culture on as it was tucked inside sacred stories that they call dreams. Dreams can be reactivated through painting, storytelling, singing, dancing, and or body painting. Such stories are the best way to pass crucial information from generation to generation, because stories are enjoyable and easy to remember, and because informations can be layered and stay invisible and secret to those who are not initiated. Like the U shape, if I hadn't tell it, well, maybe you wouldn't know about it. This is a dotter. That's basically a stick. It's a little tool that the Aborigines use to make the dots on their painting. As the dotter, tracking is also only a tool. The final product is the dream itself, in form of a painting or a story. It's a very powerful tool, though, deserving a lot of respect and dedication, but it's still only a tool. And I'm talking here about the tracking, not the dotter. Second theme I want to point out is tracking as nature reading. You've all heard this one here. To put it simple, tracks and sign are the letters, trails are the words and sentences. And nature is the book that only trackers can read. But let me ask you a question then. If only trackers read nature's book, who is going to translate to all the non-trackers? And I'll drop my tracker's motto here. Everybody leaves a track. Learn to read them. Become a tracker. Chapter 2, Connection, a story within a story. Several thousand years later, same place. Remember, this is not Australia. 2 of our human ancestors have crawled in that exact same cave of Fondegom.
You really amaze me, says the man to the lady. How can you see all these details in these 4 little scratch marks? Well, answers the lady, we have spent a lot of time together tracking, trailing, and stalking upon our animal brothers. But as much as you are very thorough about our long observations, focusing on subtle color change in their furs, noticing special accents in their songs or particularities in their gaits, I rather tend to let my consciousness go, simply imagining myself into their bodies. You know I'm good at that game, that's why the tribe named me as the new storyteller. I'm not sure about the dream parts, but I had this feeling, and nothing obvious works against it, so it makes for a nice story that may well be true. Thanks for sharing this, says the man. Indeed, we saw how cave bear wakes up from their long winter sleep, scratching way above our reach. It is most probable, and I liked that story. Now, let's walk down Bison Alley before our lights run out, and find the right place to draw that incredible scene we saw earlier. As they leave the 3.5-meter high bear's claw marks, their torchlight illuminates the painting of a little bison on the wall. He seems to breathe as the light flickers. He seems to move as the light moves in the hands of our ancestors. Then he sinks into the darkness behind them, but emerges back in the light right in front of them. Bison follows our ancestors, guides them in the dark cave to a blank space on the rock wall. They inspect that space with their torchlights, making the shadows reveal the bumps and asperities, and feel them with their fingers. The lady says this is the place. The man confirms. The shape matches the animals they want to paint. He starts to carve the general shape of the 2 reindeers with flints, while she prepares the ochres and the brushes to reveal them more brightly. The female reindeer is laying down on the right, in distress. The male reindeer is in front of her, kneeling and licking her wounds. The man insists on the tongue with his flintstone knife. The lady tells him to leave just a little empty space between the tip of the tongue and the wounds of the female reindeer. This is where the magic happens, she explains. The 2 animals are so well represented that they now seem to be living, breathing, moving under torchlights. The 2 ancestors watch their work of art and smile. They're satisfied. They manage to honor the reindeer spirits. They can leave before their torches go out. With this story, I will be focusing on the themes of cognition and empathy. Tracking is not only following tracks to find some food. Our human bodies are fragile, weak and slow, and long ago we were not on top of the food chain, and for survival our ancestors needed to hone new skills. The necessity they had to track, to follow their prey and to anticipate their predators, with no sensory connection to them, allowed our cognition to burst. To put it simple, cognition is our power of logic. And in a feedback loop, tracking increased cognition, which enhanced tracking, etc. All this leading to our modern day's science. If you haven't already read it, check Louis Liebenberg's book, The Art of Tracking, The Origin of Science. Associated to our opposable thumbs, cognition led to clever crafting, tool making, tools to craft tools to craft tools. Associated with our flexible tongue, cognition led to language that propelled us in a world of abstraction. Storytelling comes from this realm. Like the story with the egg and the hen, who came there first, we will never know. But tracking, science and storytelling enhanced each other. And after science fiction authors imagined it, we now send robots in deep space. Good tracker can route a lot of information out of one single track. Here, the bear scratch. For this, one needs to understand deeply the substrates, the context, and the animal. One needs to develop empathy to a very high degree. Empathy is the capacity to feel and understand what another being is experiencing from within their own frame of reference. Good trackers need to develop empathy to anticipate where to find the next track. And obviously, storytellers are masters of empathy, as they have to infuse it within their audience's mind for them to get hooked on their story. When reading tracks, try to tell the story from the animal's perspective. Developing this empathy helps understand and respect wildlife, both for the tracker and the listener. Chapter 3: Disconnection, our flat, square world. Old-time stories are living and organic. They can breathe, they can expand to the storyteller's will, they can circle and spiral, they can include other stories, and they can last for days. Old-time stories come from real life. They're painted on bumpy rocks and on body shapes. They're drawn in fast-moving sand. Today, we live in a flat, square world. I will not tell you a story for this chapter. If I did, it would have been calibrated with an introduction, development, a twist and an outcome. It would have been displayed on a flat, square medium, like a book, canvas, or your screen. Today, we live in a flat, square world. Look at our cities, our houses, our furniture. Our modern way of life has turned most humans away from nature. Still, we crave for it deep inside, and wildlife may never have been so scarce, elusive, and invisible. It is urgent for our fellow humans to cherish and protect wildlife and nature, and this can only come through knowledge. Tracking is an uncommon and niche passion. Though usually, once people experience it, they immediately get hooked on how deeply it connects to nature. They also realize both its simple logic and the great amount of knowledge it takes to improve. Before we get back to the story, let me give you some definitions I've come up with. Nature. It's the subtle and endless fabric made by the threads of countless living and dead beings. Most people look at this fabric in awe. Astonishingly, though, many others don't care at all, or even have fun destroying it. Trackers are looking at it meticulously, one thread at a time, analyzing how it meanders smoothly along, how it connects to other threads in incredible patterns, how it contributes to strengthen the whole picture. Interestingly enough, First Nations have no word for nature, proving both their deep connection with it and our own disconnection. Stories. Stories are human-made artificial fabrics, with a beginning, a twist, and an ending, with a finite number of characters or threads. Stories try to make a point, to convey an idea, or to build up an exciting plot. As a social species with an elaborate language and high degree of cognition, we humans have a crush on stories since times immemorial, from storytelling around the campfire to Netflix, via rock art painting, books, or opera. Trackers now. They are nature's readers, roaming stealthily in remote natural places, trying to get a glimpse of the shy wildlife by searching and analyzing their signs. The question is still running. Shall we share? Should we become wildlife's public writer? Chapter 4: Reconnection, the edge of imagination. Back to a story within a story within a story. Still the same place, several thousand years later again. We're now in the mid-1980s. A papy, that's grandfather in French, and his 10-year-old grandson are just exiting Fond de Gomme cave after a 30 minutes guided tour. How do you know so much about who were the prehistoric painters of this cave, papy? Well, I don't. But if the guide is bound to give us verified informations, I'm not. My story is probable, and nothing you can see in this cave can contradict it. And it adds some nice flesh on the dry bone we've been served. Now you will remember the reindeer's painting and cave bear scratches for the rest of your life. And you know, stories are everywhere. Each life writes its own story that is interwoven with many other stories, as we all depend on each other and as everything is connected. Pick up a couple of threads from the infinite fabric of life on Earth, and you get a great story. Look down there. Papy and his grandson are now on the muddy path from the cave to the parking lot. Look closely at those tracks. What do you see? I see dog tracks with 4 clawed toes here, and there is a smaller dog-like track, maybe fox. And here there are 5 toes and long claws, and it looks like the badger we saw last week. And oh, there's a hoof here too, a big one. I'd say it's a red deer. Good job, you know a lot already. What would be the most important story here? Look carefully. Well, deer is rare and surprisingly close to the parking lot. Fox track is beautiful, and badger is my favorite though. Look more closely. All these big mammals are great, but they all only passed in this place. Nothing really interesting besides noticing their presence. Badger has done a little bit more though, but do you see this tiny trail here? How this little bug walked in the open, in the mud, with a steady step. He may have seen some big mammals pounding around him, nearly stepping on him. How does this little bugger seize the world? What does he make of these giant mammals? Great divinities in the footsteps of which he can only crawl? Dangerous earthquakes or other natural disasters? I don't know, try to imagine. And look here, the end of his journey, right in front of Badger's paw. This depression is Badger's snout. For him, it was a snack on the go. For the beetle, the end of it all. This, for me, is the most important story I can read right here. The themes I pick up here are mingling and rules for tracking as storytelling. I like to consider myself as a creative mind, though I had to admit that I never really create things from scratch, and I think none of us can. We only combine things, consciously or not. We compile, we model, we assemble, we mingle. This process then creates unique works, but they never spring out of the blue. When using tracking to create a story, the story is already there. Trackers are merely revealing it, as our ancestors revealed reindeers that were already in the rock wall, as Papy reveals the bug's life and death story. That's creating versus modeling. In French, the writer's block syndrome is called blank page syndrome. Well, there is no blank page to the tracker. No worries, only stories. Papy's story also gives us the main rule for tracking as storytelling. That is, you can ride the edges of imagination for the sake of a good story. The only limit is what the tracks can confirm or infirm. Obviously, the less you know about tracking, the blurrier the edge, and the more you know, the clearer. A secondary rule will be Occam's razor, or the principle of parsimony, a problem-solving principle that recommends searching for explanations constructed with the smallest possible set of elements. Then rule number 3 would be keep it real, keep it fun and enjoyable. Chapter 5, Imagining. Once upon a track. Imagine humanity making the right choices for nature, going in the good direction. For this to happen, humans must renew their knowledge about nature. Not in a childish Walt Disney way, as our activities are too often compared to, or at least in my experience. Not in an old times traditional way either, as today's problems have nothing in common. Not even in a specialist headaching way, but in a balanced, wise and yet exciting way. And trackers possess such a solid and general knowledge. I am emphasizing general over specialized here, as specialization enables humanity to compile a great amount of knowledge, but it also cuts each one of us from seeing the big picture. Drop an entomologist in the woods and there's much chance for him to get lost. We trackers could act as intermediaries between nature and our fellow humans. As translators, we can give voice to our wild neighbors. And to touch more people, we need to use a medium cherished by all, you guessed, storytelling. This idea has been going around in my head for several years now. trackers as nature translators, or as wildlife's public writer. And step by step I have achieved several little projects along these lines. Card games, initiation booklets, videos, online help group, trailcam network, etc. When I was invited to talk here on the ITS, it pushed me to go a step further. My new project now has worldwide and collaborative expectations, and it only needs you to join in. Mind you, I'm not saying this is going to save the world, only that it heads in the right direction in my opinion. We're all drops of water in the ocean of life. Acts good, try to touch many, hope to change more. That's the best I can do. But I guess I'm preaching the choir here. If this project is carried by trackers, it aims the general public. Well, nature lovers at least. By doing so, it sheds light onto the little-known passion for tracking and onto its actors. Let me introduce you to my new project, Upon a Track. Upon a Track offers to turn trackers' secret discoveries into thrilling stories for all to read. Its website is freshly online at uponatrack.com. A new story revealed every Saturday morning in the Read section. This little story I write using trackers' pictures and a simple survey. Your pictures from your own spots. Readers get to discover new places worldwide, new animals, new connections. They'll be immersed into a mystery animal's thoughts during the little time frame in which he left his track. And there is a playful twist to it all, as the reader must guess which animal. One rule, the edge of imagination. Remember? I'm allowed to ride the edges of my imagination for the sake of a good story. The only limit is what the tracks can confirm or infirm. So it is basically stories, game, animals, and travels. To contribute, simply send us a couple of pictures from your tracking sessions. One of the landscape and another with at least 2 animals tracks. Not just the one track of one animal, because a story is always better with many characters. The website has been online since the beginning of this year, on uponatrack.com. So there are already 7 stories available for you to read in the Read section. You will see that these stories are not long epic novels, but just little glimpses in the life of wildlife, as seen through the couple of pictures we've been fed. Many great trackers from this assembly have already sent us their pictures. Many friends from different continents and countries have also contributed. And there is no need to be an expert tracker to contribute, just find those tracks and we can help. And no need either to wait until you spot the tracks of the rarest animal to contribute. For me, badger tracks are very common, and sometimes they can even get a little bit boring. But for my friend Dinawan from Australia, or Jonas from Kenya, well, these tracks are very exotic, and so are for me their own boring giraffe tracks and emu tracks. Well, here we are. I really hope that I managed to pass my message through. Track and Tell has got a great potential. I hope that you will contribute to this original project with your own pictures and maybe even help for bigger viral diffusion, or at least come regularly check the websites to discover the new story as your weekend treat. Also, that you share this website with your friends and family throughout the world. Many thanks for your attention, and a big thanks to all those listed below. Bye bye.